sponsored thing or anything like that. I want to make sure this is very clear. This is just an opportunity to ask Mark a bunch of questions and kind of get some inside feedback on what's actually been going on there, why all of the changes are happening, what the final results are going to be, and hopefully clarifying things up quite a bit. So without further ado, I want to bring out Mark and say thank you very much for coming out here and joining us and clarifying all this stuff.
First off, that just started way out of context. I have no idea what the hell just happened there. Second off, a lot of people still aren't happy. 35% of the votes aren't happy.
Telling us what's going on and giving us some insight into the future, and for taking what looked to be some extremely hard questions. Everybody in Slack, I'm in the Slack with a bunch of other insiders, and they asked some really hard, very strong questions. So we'll be getting into those in a minute. So anyway, thank you again, Mark.
Make us hard.
I wanted to just start with letting you talk and say your piece first and to go over what's going on and get all of that out before we dive into the questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate being on, Jason, and thank you everybody for joining. I'm not going to go over all of the changes here. I'm sure we're going to talk about them a lot. I hope people had a chance to see my letter earlier today or to go through the FAQ and the other stuff there. But I did just want to hit one part first that's really, really important, and that's just, I just want to say I'm sorry. I know it's been a very tough week to hear about.
Can we pause this for a quick second? What is he sorry about? Dude, he's a team lead. He's not the C-suite. What is he apologizing? Who are you apologizing for?
A bunch of the very well-deserved feedback on the changes we made. It's very clear. We did not take enough feedback, listen to enough feedback before we rolled out the program. And
I think he's the CEO
I know
now.
that comes with how hard it is to earn trust, and I know how easy it is to lose trust. So super clear. We've got a lot of work to do. And so I really, really wanted to start with telling everybody here, and frankly, the game development community at large, sorry. And so, with that, I'm happy to talk through any of the questions and just cover whatever you want to talk about, Jason.
All right, great. That's good, because I've got a lot of questions. I mean, there's a lot of things that I think people aren't clear about, and a lot of things that people are just really confused about, like why some decisions were made, what those decisions are, and what's going to happen in the future too. So let's get started. I'm just going to start diving into my giant list of questions. So the first one was why did you go about doing this whole thing, the pricing plan change, putting this up, posting it out there, making a lot of people angry, of course, and then rolling it back a week later? Like, what?
Because they rolled it out thinking they're going to make easy money. The world exploded, and they went, oh, shit. Well, this is the softest ball question I've seen yet. I thought we were going to get some Nolan Ryan out here.
What was the point of doing all that if you're going to kind of do this rollback afterwards?
Well, the most fundamental thing that we're trying to do is we're building a sustainable business for Unity. And for us, that means that we do need to have a model that includes some sort of balanced exchange, including shared success. That's really, really important for the long-term future of how we think about our business, how we think about the engine. And the main reason is really clear. It has to be a sustainable business. We want to keep massively and deeply investing in the engine. We want to make sure that we can build the best editor and runtime for everyone to build the games today and tomorrow. And that's the reason why we're working on it. I'm very, very focused on that. It's very important for Unity.
Just so you know, they make about $2.2 billion a year. They have approximately 7,000 employees. So that puts it at an average of what? $280,000 per employee is their income, is their gross income. And so they have to be able to make it below that line to just simply be profitable. I assume they're profitable.
Oh, that's fair. And how much, real quickly, can we talk about just what, for the people who haven't seen the info, talk about what the just overview, the high level changes are for people who don't know. So it's not completely removed, but
they're not profitable. It's kind of surprising. You could make $2.2 billion a year making a game engine and not be profitable.
there are changes that it's only going to apply to specific versions, and there were some other things. Can you just give a real quick overview of that for anybody who's just catching up right now and maybe hasn't seen that post?
Yeah, there's a long fact with a whole bunch more details, but I think I would just really maybe hit
7,000 employees.
First one, I'll just start by talking about Unity Personal. That's the version of Unity that's free to use. It's used by the majority of all of our game creators. It's not a part of the runtime fee program at all. And we made some other changes along with that. The first one is we made sure that people have the option to remove the Unity splash screen if they would like when they're using that particular product. And we're also changing it so that before, the way that Unity Personal worked is that you could use it up to $100,000 of revenue for your company. Now it's $200,000, so twice the size. So it's easier to use for more people, covers more cases, and it's more flexible. So that's number one. Not a part of the program, totally free. Majority of our users.
So that's one of the changes, is that the Personal, which is the vast majority, no longer has the runtime fee associated with it. I think that's good because the runtime fee was a solid 20 cents per install. Definitely, don't worry, we got the magical algorithms. We will know when someone's trying to denial of wallet you.
A lot more flexibility. And again, because we've announced some other changes around sunsetting Unity Plus, that means that you can use Unity Personal and not have to do the splash screen, which is a reason that some people were using Plus. So then if we move on to the runtime program. So the runtime fee applies for people who are over both $1 million in sort of trailing 12 months revenue, money they've made over the last year on kind of an ongoing basis, and 1 million engagements with new users, essentially. And for those users, there are the following changes. The first one is, this is with next year's LTS, which would be, what is 2023 LTS shipping in 2024. So it doesn't impact any games that have currently shipped, and it doesn't impact the games people may have already been working on for a very, very long period of time.
I think this is good. Lana Lux again. Gosh, 3 years on strain just to get this dropped just a couple weeks ago on her. Crazy, right? And so I think this is a good move to make it so that if you're building a game right now, you are not gonna get boned by this, right? I think that's probably a good move, right? In general,
one of the most, I think, really key pieces of feedback we heard is that it was a really big business model change that people didn't expect, and so.
Why wasn't this the setup from the beginning? Because it was going to be a time-sensitive thing. At that time, January 1st, we were going to start charging. Really, the reason why they didn't just do it as an install versus this LTS is that you can continue to use Unity from 2023 for some amount of time. I don't know how the exact rules work with Unity and how the runtime and stuff, all that works, but there's going to be some amount of time that they're going to be able to use this older version of Unity without having to upgrade, thus avoiding the entire install fee altogether. And so that's kind of this bypass workaround business. And so instead, they just wanted to get everybody on, right? So they're like, instead of making it a version-based, they're just going to make it time-based. 2021 or 2024, January 1st, boom, we get all of it. And yes, 7,000 employees for a game engine is insane.
So it's very clear to us that having it start on a future version where everybody can make the choice to use it is really, really important. The second that we heard along with that is that people need to know that they can rely on a set of terms when they start using a version of Unity. So we're going to make sure that that's the case. There are even some pieces about that, things like the GitHub repo that, by the way, I will just say, prior to last week, I did not know existed. And now I know a lot about, and we're making sure, I think it's already back up there. It has all of them in there. Obviously, our website will always have our legal terms and terms of service and all of those sorts of things, but we're going to make sure it's also on the GitHub so people can track that. And then the last that I would talk about is...
I've heard that the TOS on GitHub thing is kind of more of a misunderstanding in the sense that it was actually removed well before this debacle went down. And so some people claimed timing. I don't know. Maybe they did. Maybe they have 200 IQ. Maybe they don't. I don't know. But it was still removed before all this Unity stuff. It just looks super shitty when people discover that the TOS removed from GitHub coinciding with really bad news. It just makes it look horrible.
When you are, using this future version of Unity, you have a game that's over the $1 million, million engagements, that there's a choice between either a 2.5% revenue share or measuring based on this calculated amount of initial user engagements that you can do. And if you do both of those, you'll always be billed the lesser of whatever that calculation is.
I actually like that.
If you only wanted to do one of them, leave the box blank, whatever.
This
and again,
is really
that's
good.
only for those games that were over those thresholds.
By the way, this is really good. I actually thought that this was super smart of them because it at least makes people. I mean, first off, they're already adding a new fee, which totally is screwing people in some sense, in some capacity, because they signed up already paying large multi-$1,000 per seat, per month, per year, depending on which one, and now they're getting a new fee. And at least it's like, well, we're going to reduce it down to 2.5% royalty, kind of like Unreal, or this install fee, and we'll automatically choose the one that's lesser for you. So it feels nicer, but you're still already getting a new fee. So I think some people are going to be feeling, a little, it's apologetic, not smart. Yeah, I don't think people are very stoked. At least this is the best possible option. It's much better than it was, but it's still not great, right? You're still getting a new fee. And plus, it's not like indie game dev is known for its luxurious money that everyone's getting. You don't meet too many indie game devs driving Lambos. This ain't PHP, okay? This is not PHP at all.
So you give them the option.
Sorry, one more minute. I forget. Sorry, one more minute. You asked me. And then the other key part on that one is it's self-reported. So it's both numbers being self-reported, both on the revenue side and on the user engagements.
Yeah, I think that's a big one. I think there are a couple questions about that we'll get into, but I think the self-reporting and the mix-up
PHP
around there
Lambo.
is a big one that I think people will be pretty happy with. Let's go. There's a lot of questions, so I want to go on to the next one, which reads kind of meanly, so I'm going to read it really mean too. So, did you even bother to talk to customers before you rolled out your version from last week?
Cool.
No, did you guys talk to customers? Can you talk a little bit about that?
We did. We talked to partners, large customers, small customers, lots of internal people. We didn't listen to enough of their feedback. Just want to be clear. We should have listened to more of their feedback, and we need to do better. And I could tell
rewind that for a second.
Partners, large customers.
You rolled out your version from last week. No, did you guys talk to customers? Can you talk a little bit about that?
We did. We talked to partners, large customers, small customers, lots of internal people. We didn't listen to enough of their feedback. Just want to be clear. We should have listened to more of their feedback.
Okay, so hold on. They talked to larger customers, maybe not a great customer base to talk to, but still they should be able to express a lot of these problems with it all. Internal people. I feel like I'm pressing a little bit of X right here, okay? I can feel myself reach. Dude, who do they talk to that was just like, oh, I'm ambivalent? No, nobody's been ambivalent. I have not met one person that was just like, install fee. Yeah, it seems both practical and easy to track and fair, right? What did you listen to? What were the other suggestions that they changed? That's the question I want to hear. If this was the best they came out with, what shitty, crazy ideas were the ones that didn't make it?
And we need to do better. And I can tell you, as an example, on Sunday, I think, it's been a long week, so the days merge together a little bit, but on Sunday, I think we put up on X a kind of a statement saying that we'll get back to you in a couple of days. The reason we didn't get back to you in a couple of days is because as we were working through the plan, we were going back and talking to big customers, independent developers, partners over and over again to get that feedback. Because I think the most fundamental thing about talking to customers is it's kind of an ongoing iterative conversation. And we didn't do that well enough. And now I'm very, very convicted on this policy that we're doing that.
Nice. Yeah, I think that, in my opinion, at least, the updates seem to kind of fix everybody's problems that I've talked to. Especially, we'll dive into the trust stuff later, but I think that that's the one part people are still a little iffy on. But I think that's even probably going to get mostly cleared up. So let's go on to the next question, which was, why didn't you just go with a rev share model from the get-go? So why not just go, hey, we're 2.5% now, or half of Epic, right? or whatever. Why was there a whole install thing in the beginning anyway?
We think it's going to be cheaper for a lot of games. So, listen, we're trying to build a model that we think is fair and sort of, is a good sort of value exchange that works for games once they find a level of success. And we also want to tie it to sort of this value that Unity brings, which is, our runtime that's inside of the games themselves. And so it felt like a way where we could tie those two pieces together. And we think that in a pretty reasonable number of cases, that's actually a smaller number, and we think that's good. Now, what we heard, got a lot of really, really good feedback, is that there were cases where people, first off, couldn't plan because they're like, well, I don't know, maybe something's going to go crazy, or I have this particular scenario and that doesn't work. And so adding in the 2.5% revenue share as an option, you can only use that, or where you have the both, and so you can always plan for it and hopefully do better. Definitely was, frankly, my opinion, makes the plan better based on what we were trying to do. So it was really good feedback.
Yeah, I was, to be honest, I said this in the streams earlier, that the idea of being forced on a rev share doesn't sound appealing to me, but I've come from the background of MMOs and $50, $60 AAA games where a small install fee, we're looking at less than 1% or a 1% fee. So I like the option of both, but I haven't understood.
Just to be real, and I'm just trying to think about how does the average indie developer feel about this. I don't think they feel good about either of them, especially when they're already paying a subscription fee. I really think that the subscription fee has to be fully dropped or reduced or created anew that makes sense, say, with customer support and other sorts of type things, right? Because that would make a lot of sense if you're like, okay, I'm going to develop this game. I pay nothing the entire time I develop it. I pay nothing for all of it. And when I go to release it, then I have to pay if I make some money. Whereas if you're paying up until the point and then you pay when you make money, it just kind of feels like, that doesn't, not really feeling great about that. It kind of feels like there's something, it just feels odd to have them both. He's lying about talking to users. Look at his eyes. They shift left. Okay, I'm not into reading people's expressions. First off, we don't even know if this camera's mirrored. He could be shifting right now. Second off, I don't have that much Alex Jasms inside of me to be able to work. It's just
the argument of just force a rev share. So hopefully that doesn't change and we stay with both options. Okay?
I
assume that's the plan, though.
No, that's absolutely the plan. Or the plan is that choice.
All right, so the next question is a point.
He's talking to people. You got to realize that there is a team of lawyers right now sitting in this room with every question in order planned, with every one of his potential answers, and he is the highest ranked individual that doesn't come across as a lizard person who knows how to read from cue cards and act like a human, right? You wouldn't want to put Mark Zuckerberg, whatever he is, in front of the camera trying to tell everyone that they feel bad, because no one believes lizard person slidey, I feel bad now. Like, no one believes that thing. And so they just found the most human person that works the highest up, and this is what he gets. Okay? He's reading. You can tell he's looking at people at least.
Who is responsible for the policy and its decision to roll out?
There you go. Great question.
Well, listen, this is my part of the business, and there's a lot of people, obviously, internally that have worked on this. The executive team has worked on this, but I'm responsible for what we're doing inside of Create. The entire executive team has been a part of this. But I'll also say, this is really important for Unity. We have to focus on building a strong, sustainable business that allows us to continue to, invest in the ways that we want, so we can build the best game engine that hopefully everybody wants to use to make great games.
Do you really believe that the largest decision made in Unity's history is driven by a non-C-suite guy, a team lead? I don't know. Maybe exec suite. I don't know. This feels like I don't know. This is a non-answer. I kind of do, to be honest. I kind of don't. Not this big. These are largely driven with higher people involved as well. Create is the games division, but you can't come across these things without massive buy-in from other people.
I tend to agree there. Although there was an idea on the last stream that you should just make your own Fortnite and make billions off of that.
I like that idea.
Which would be nice.
Just make billions off a game.
If you don't mind that idea. All right.
Just make a billion.
Yes. By the way, if it was easiest, make your own Fortnite. I think that problem number one there is that's extremely impressive to do once.
Yes. No, I agree. I think it would be nice, but it's definitely a good dream. This next question is one I have been wondering and I don't know anything about. And they were wondering if it's legal to change the terms of service overnight. And I don't know if it was necessarily overnight, but I don't know anything about the legal side of the stuff. All I've heard is random speculation from people who are also not lawyers. But can you just address this question, the legality of the terms of service change?
Unity did try to build their own game for 2 years and were unable to. It is hard. Building games is literally like the hardest thing ever.
And maybe the GitHub thing too. You'd mentioned just kind of discovering that. I don't know anything about it really.
Well, I mean, I think at sort of one level, all companies change their terms over time, frequently and constantly and consistently, because frankly, the world changes. Gaming is a very dynamic world. The world we live in is dynamic, and there are obviously always new things that are being added or whatever. However, I want to back up from that and say, it kind of comes back to your trust point, which is, I think one thing that I heard a lot is people very, very deeply need to know what they're signing up for when they pick a version of Unity to build their game on, and that they can, be sure that they can continue to use that. And I think that feedback, and there's a lot of other things that come along with trust, so I just want to be clear, but that feedback is really, really, really super clear. And that's one reason why, in what I talked about today, we're going to make sure that you can do that. And it also does come back to the GitHub thing. Again, I didn't know about that. It sort of was, I didn't know about the repo. So, and from the Unity perspective, we've always put our terms on the web page and make sure that they're including the new ones, and so show the difference, what's changed between those two. However, we're a community. We're heavily used by a community of game developers. So another way that we can make sure that that's clear is to put it in the types of tools that they use, like repos and GitHub, so it's easy to track. So to me, that was an obvious one that we should also put back.
So one thing I'm going to reemphasize this. One thing I really like about their change of making it so this version of Unity gets the runtime fee from here on out. One reason why I really like that is now the onus is on Unity to make the engine so appealing that the runtime fee is worth the upgrade. I do think that is a really, I honestly think that makes it kind of worth it. I really do think that this makes it so that people are going to have to wait until they're compelled to really want it. Casey replied? Okay, hold on. Nice. All right, I'm going to put you right here with me. We're going to go down low. All right, you ready for more?
Everybody. I'm ready.
Casey does have a pro camera view. Look how good he literally looks like he's in lighting from a video game. Like you already have it all good looking.
I do graphics programming. What can I say?
It's clear. I work with JavaScript. Like, it's obvious what's going on here.
Installs and downloads and piracy and all that. Yeah, I figure you've got the details.
I can't. Yeah, and I'm going to say, sounded like a little corporate-y here for a second while I use the words around it, but I'm just going to use them and then try to explain them a little bit. And that's, the goal is as simple as saying that it's a legitimate user of your software on a particular distribution channel. So, okay, what's a legitimate user? Well, a legitimate user would be an actual user, not your automated use, not whether there was piracy, not someone that had bought it and instantly refunded it, but like a legitimate first time that someone was engaging with your free-to-play game or your paid game. What's a distribution channel? Well, an app store is a distribution channel. So if that user went to like a particular store and bought it or downloaded it or whatever, then you would start thinking of that as sort of doing it. Now, if they had multiple devices, or they reinstalled it, you don't count those multiple times, right? Because I might have gotten the same thing in my library from a store that I can use on a couple of different devices. Great, that's one, not two. So there's a bunch more examples that are around that in the FAQ, and we're very committed to making sure that we give more details around that. But our intent is very simple, which is that the first time that your game with our runtime engages with a very legitimate user on a distribution channel, use that as a count. And then again, we think that many times that will be much less than this 2.5% revenue share. And so you could pay less or less through that, or you just go to the revenue share if you didn't want to track that.
Right.
So I kind of get two questions here with that answer. Casey, can you hear all this, by the way?
I can't, but I figured out stream hacks, which is I just have your Twitch channel on another page and I unmute it whenever they're talking. So I got most of it.
Okay, you got most of it. There's two things I kind of want to point out, which is, one, they keep talking about this self-report model, but everything he just said right there seems like they're tracking it. And then on top of it, he lightly touched on piracy. Like, has Unity solved piracy? Can they just hand the industry this instant piracy solving equation that they got? Like, I don't think anyone solved this problem. So it sounds like they have no idea.
It does, and I just keep going back to the exact same thing that I was thinking before, which is that they had to get this fee in there because otherwise they can't comply with their previous TOS stuff that said they would never add anything other than fees, basically. So I'm still very skeptical. These discussions, the answers that are being given here and the softball questions that he's being asked are just... I mean, we're also in the weeds. Who cares at this point? That's not what people are mainly asking about, is exactly how will you track installs. Like, they have a trust issue to rebuild here, and we're talking about the minutia of like whether 2 downloads on an app store counts as 2 install. Like, really? I mean, okay, we can, you and I can sit here and react to that, but is that really the important part?
Yeah. Well, hopefully these upcoming questions are a little bit, because I mean, the guy alluded that there's some tough ones coming, so I want the tough ones.
I'm not gonna hold my breath.
Okay, here we go.
It makes sense. I think it's most of the time, or at least like I said, on the games that I've worked on, it would be less than 2.5%. But I like that there's that option there. And just to real quick clarify one more time for everybody on the counting of those, that's just you're going in, make sure I understand this right. I'm just going into like Steam and saying, hey, I sold this many, subtracting my refunds from that and putting that in.
Refunds, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of what I expected.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the goal is self-reported based on data that you easily have available, not sort of like I have to track some sort of user behavior that's, different than I've ever done or anything like that.
You don't have to go add in analytics or some tracking or anything. You just look at whatever your numbers are and then put those into the page. Yeah, that's kind of been what I expected from the start, but it was definitely, I'll be honest.
I'm going to take a quick pause here. I would be surprised that Steam doesn't just hand them this information.
Well, I also don't understand what he's saying now, because Steam reports is not installs. It reports sales. So which is it? Is it sales or installs now? I don't know, because Steam doesn't tell you every time a user installs and uninstalls your program, as far as I know. They only tell you how many you've sold. That's what your dashboard says, right? So, I mean, does he even understand his own policy at this point? I don't know. I wish I was there asking the questions, right?
All right, we'll go.
It was very unclear because it said there was a proprietary algorithm in there. I feel like those 2 words made the thing drastically more confusing and led to a lot of speculation. Even for me, I was like, I don't know what that means.
Like,
yeah, you're right. And we want to be super clear that self-reporting, and by the way, on both the revenue side and on that is really key. It's why this program is very important, but we're trying to make sure that this is, easy for our game creators as well.
Yeah, no, that's good. I mean, that seems like data that at least I've always had. If you sell games and have people download them, you've got the info on how many are downloading it or how much money you're making each month. So that seems relatively straightforward and a lot better than some built-in tracking spyware thing that I kept hearing about.
Yeah, and again, I'm sorry that I had to use the corporate jargon, but the truth is there's just a lot of different scenarios in games. And so like, some people might say, why isn't it sales? But like sales doesn't work if it's a free-to-play game. And so we're just, we're trying to make sure that we can clearly define that in a way that works for a bunch of different ways that Unity's used.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's just now the going away from the word installs, I think, was the number one thing. This install has a reinstall, and that goes overboard. So this next question is a big one. I'm curious. I don't know if you're going to know the answer to this, but how many customers have you lost, and how many more are you expecting to lose over this? I mean, I've seen a lot of people just say they're up and changing different engines, or at least start looking into different options. People talking about changing their future games. Is this have you guys tracked that or been keeping an eye on that?
Listen, we've seen all of the critical feedback, and it really hurts to read those types of things. And it's based on what we said and not getting the feedback. So I think those are real reactions that people had, and it's tough to see. My job, our job at Unity, is to make sure that we build the best product, the best platform that we can, so that you can build great games. And we're going to focus on that and hope to give people a great option so that they use it. But people definitely have options, and if we don't do a good job, and if they don't want to, if we don't continue to invest in the way that we want to, then we know that they'll go somewhere else, and that's why that's our focus.
Casey, could you remind me again his answer? I think I blacked out there.
I mean, he didn't, right? he doesn't want to say it. Although I think I was a little ahead of you in the stream for this, because I think in a second here he does say he hasn't seen any numbers.
Oh, okay. Let's. But that was most. I mean, to be completely fair, to think in my like corporate world, which is, you can't possibly say on a live stream you've lost a lot of customers and be a publicly traded company. Like, that's just going to cause panic, fear. Panic at the Disco is going down, and your stock is going to plummet because it's still trading hours. It's still after-hour trading hours. And so...
Well, and we also know, so unless he is basically saying that the companies who said they switched off Unity's ad system this week are lying, we know that at least they have lost those customers temporarily. right? Which he could have acknowledged, and he chose not to. So that also is a little suspicious because we have heard from people who specifically said, we're stopping to use this now. So I didn't hear that factored in either. He would have known about that. Those were big companies.
Yep. Okay.
Well, I think that with the changes, a lot of the people that were considering changing will probably reconsider that, especially and get into the terms of service type stuff, which we'll get into those questions in a few minutes, I think. Let's go on, though. It's just tons, and I'm running out of time. We have a hard stop at 2, so I got to go quick. So now you'll be charging a revenue share and a seat license cost. How is that benefiting your users? Can you talk about why they both still exist?
Great question. Well, listen, our goal is to build a sustainable business so that we can continue to invest. But the key thing I would say is majority of our users pay neither. Majority of our users are using Unity Personal, which is free to use, and we want to continue to deeply invest in making that a great platform for building games. Then, there are a variety of options where we're going to continue to add value into, whether it's Unity Pro or Unity Enterprise or those sorts of things for you to use it. And then for a subset of games that passes those really high thresholds, there'd be the runtime program as well. We feel like it's a balanced program that allows us to invest in the way that we want and be able to deeply deliver the features that will make it great for people building the amazing games that get built on Unity, both today and tomorrow.
Real quick, I want to go back that last.
I was really hoping to hear a little bit more because he just explained what the pricing model was, which we all know. I mean, I still just think it's kind of weird to have two different charges. Like if I'm paying per seat, it's weird to pay for something and then have to pay more when you use something. Oh.
I completely agree, and I think one of the problems here is that sounds a lot more like the kind of thing that would happen if you were two businesses negotiating on a contract. So in a more complicated contract where it's like, oh, we worked with this other company and we worked out exactly all the details of how our businesses work, and here's what we ended up with. Sometimes you get weird contracts like that. But Fair. In the consumer space, when you're talking about a contract of adhesion, basically, where I'm just signing up to publicly available terms that everyone else gets, nobody's familiar with this. I mean, we sign up for Adobe. We sign up for Office 365. We sign up for Autodesk. None of them have this weird back-end royalty, right?
Yeah.
The only person who has something like that is Unreal, who charges no seat license, right?
Yes.
So they seem to be doing two separate business models at the same time, which again, maybe, they've tried to work out that math just so it ends up being beneficial for everyone or something like that. But from a consumer's point of view, it doesn't look good. Yeah. And there should be an answer for that because it doesn't look good. It feels like double dipping, as your chat just said.
Yeah, it feels very double dippy. All right, we'll keep going.
Next question. There's a couple people complaining that you didn't tell them how many people you've already lost. I'm curious, is that like a number you actually know? Like, do you know that there's been a dip in users, or is that something that you have to wait a little while to see?
Listen, I see all of it on like any channel where we get feedback. Obviously, we see all of the feedback. I haven't seen anything in our like actual numbers that would show that. Not saying that means it's not happening. And I will just say that it's my job to make sure that we build the best product. So that people don't want to do that and that they want to stay on Unity and build great games.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of what I figured. I figured if you'd seen a big giant drop, you would have mentioned it. But yeah.
I mean, yeah.
So let's see. Here was one of the questions that this was one of my own questions, finally. If you could go back in time and redo this from the start, I'm wondering how you would have done this differently. Like if you went back to January or whenever the idea for this started coming up, what would you have done different?
Yeah, listen, we're going to do a business model transition that is new and it's different, and there's a lot to work through there. So obviously, I would have probably engaged in the conversation earlier, listened more, been more consistent and clear with some of the information we put out there. A good example is, we have a estimator that we put out today with it, so, which we didn't before, which meant everybody was going to their own sheets and all that kind of stuff. So we created an information vacuum that made it even harder on its own. So we would do a better job there. But the actual fundamental thing is we didn't listen to enough feedback. And the plan today is a great plan for Unity, and I think it's a really strong plan for creators, and that's because we got better feedback and it made us build a better plan. So, candidly, what I would do if I went back is I would get that feedback.
Yeah, I like that. And the reason that
Okay, I mean, that's fair. I think it's good to know you've made a mistake, you goofed up a little bit, and you got to listen to people.
You're being a little bit more charitable than I probably would be on this one, Prime. So that is the analogy that I use here is it's like if your kid crashes the car, do you want them to apologize for crashing the car or for not asking you first if they could crash the car, right? And there's a difference between those two things. one shows that the person actually understands what they did wrong. The other one is sort of like wanting to get the apology over with without actually acknowledging the actual things you did wrong. So if the only thing you're going to sit here and say you're sorry for is that you didn't listen enough, well, what about deleting the GitHub? What about the fact that they removed the terms of service thing a few months back that would have prevented this kind of change? What about them having known for over a year, probably, if the Andreessen Horowitz guy's thread where he talks about having worked on these shows? What about them knowing for that long and only springing this on game developers with 3 months to go? Where's the real apology for the unethical behavior? I don't care about your apology for not listening more.
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't hold water to me.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so maybe I'm a very I try to be a charitable guy, okay, Casey? But
you're much sweeter than me, Tom. You're much sweeter. I appreciate it. I love your show because you're so nice.
Thank you. I try to be a generally nice person here, but I think those are really good points, which is they did know for a year, which means they didn't start to listen. And they did actually a great job of listening. They put it out there. Everyone went, what the hell? And then they just pulled it back. They actually, it's probably right. He shouldn't be apologizing for not listening. They listened perfectly. They just told no one until the bomb was already lit, which is probably a bad time to let people know that there's a bomb. Like, they could have said it a long time ago and got a lot of this feedback maybe before they put it out there. So that's fair take. That's a fair take.
And what about all the malfeasance? What about deleting the GitHub? What about deleting the TOS? Those are the things I want to hear an apology for, right? It's like, maybe this blindsided you a bit. That's okay. I understand. Maybe you you thought it was going to go over better than it was. That's all right. You don't really need to apologize for that. That's just a misstep. But the things that seem actually unethical, where's the apology?
Yeah, fair. That's fair. All right, we'll keep going.
I wanted to ask that question too, is because I think a lot of people are concerned about what happens with future pricing changes. If stuff needs to change in the future, how is that going to be addressed? If this doesn't work out or something else totally drastically changes in the economy or the gaming scene, what's going to happen? So I was kind of curious. It seems getting out there and having this be a conversation with questions from the beginning would have been a whole lot easier, a lot less painful at least. All right, let's go on to the next one. Is Unity in a bad place financially?
Listen, we're very focused on building a really strong company. We had you can go back and look at our financials. We had a really reasonable second quarter, and we're optimistic about the path that we're on.
$533 million.
But we're also really focused on making sure that we have the sustainable ability to make sure that we can continue to invest in where we're going. I mean, I feel like I'm saying the same thing over and over again. I don't really mean to be doing that sort of repeated thing, but it's the truth. This is about making sure that this massive investment that we put into our engine and tools is one that we can keep doing, because for us, that's the focus, making sure that we can build the very best platform that we can.
I'm curious, a little follow-up on that. According to your internal projections, is this going to be enough to just keep things stable, or do you feel like you're going to need to reevaluate in another year or two?
Well, listen, when we make a shift that says that it doesn't start until next year, obviously that means that games that are participating in the runtime fee are going to come later. So there's a shift on sort of where some of that comes, but this is about a business model transition. This isn't about, hey, we need to do something for the next 3 months or something like that. This is about setting up the foundation of the company. This program is critical for us, for the foundation of the company, to be able to continue to invest for a very, very long period of time. So if the shape kind of is like this, like a little shape that goes like this versus being earlier, that's less relevant than making sure that we have a right program that works for our creators. That's why I believe that this is a better program, because I think we got great feedback to make it a better program and works for Unity.
Yeah.
Okay, so we don't know. He didn't answer if they're in a bad financial position. They're obviously focusing on growth, like any Silicon Valley company. It's all about growth. So this is going to happen, but I think the thing that has to be stated is that the self-reporting, I bet, will end within the year. There's no way they can keep self-reporting a real thing.
I mean, I guess what I would say is, once again, I think you're being too nice. If you listen to the content of what he just said, he said this is about creating a sustainable business. Unity has been in business for over a decade. They already IPO'd. When was the point when they started looking around going, maybe we should think about structuring this around being a sustainable business? At some point, they kind of had to know that this shoe was going to drop. And the question is when? When did he know that? Because if the answer is like 5 years ago and they were just trying to run this out for as long as they could, that's a really bad thing, right? Did they literally just wake up this year and go, oh gosh, we this is the first time we realized we don't make any money? Like, I don't think so.
I just kept seeing our gross number and I'm like, that's several millions. We're good.
Yeah. What's going on? Am I the only person who's hearing this? I don't know. If I was there, I don't know how the Jason Wyman guy is sitting there with a straight face. But I guess that's his job. So I don't know.
Straight face guy.
I'm flabbergasted.
So this guy, someone just said this in chat. Unreal Engine owned by Epic, who has 2,200 employees. Epic Games, 2,200 employees. Remember, they made Fortnite minimum, right? And they're still making a bunch of updates to that. Unity has 7,700 employees.
Yeah.
That's so crazy. I'm still trying to think of what does 7,700 people do.
This is that web scale problem. Unity is a game engine company operating on web scale logistics, basically, and that does not work, right? It doesn't work. They kept trying to make it work with ads. It doesn't work.
Yeah, because obviously if they can get ads, they will make all the money because that's their real play. They want ads. They're going to make a lot more money from ads. This all seems kind of wild. I'm curious what can.
But their ads topped out. I mean, they have their ads already make more than their engine. So where's they don't have that kind of growth in their ad space left. I don't think. Right?
Maybe, I don't know. AppLovin, they make a lot more. AppLovin makes a lot more than Unity. And so
okay, so you think they can get more customers basically just to transition?
Yeah, okay. I mean, how many trillions of hours are there per year on mobile games? Just mobile games, right? Like there has to be a pretty good surface area for them to go after. Anyways,
how much does AppLovin make? I'm curious. How much do they make in revenue a year?
I don't know, but they tried to buy Unity. They make more than Unity. They offered $20 billion for Unity, which was effectively. It was like 1.5x their market cap.
Interesting.
So they make enough to say, I'll give you $20 billion, which is still not as much as Elon offered on Twitter, but they still make,
Good point. All right. I'm going to look that up. Well, let's go to the next one. I'm going to look that up so I can see what they're,
Well, hopefully it works for everybody going forward too. I think it seems viable and it seems a lot better than the previous one. So I'm good with it so far. Let's go over. I want to get into these trust questions soon. So let's get into the next one. Has the stagnation over the engine over the last several years been in part due to low revenue? And will this price change fix that? Has that been like an internal thing where you just don't have the money to invest in whatever the new thing is that you're working on or get it done, or is that not an issue? I have no idea what the answer is here.
Well, I'm not going to accept the word stagnation because we are extremely focused and have been for years in a huge amount of things that we're putting into the engine. And by the way, I know that we get a lot of feedback where the engine isn't, the editor doesn't work in the ways that people want, where there are things that we could do better. So I'm not trying to say that, but we are focused in every one of our releases on putting out a bunch of new stuff. Like the 22 LTS, I believe was a really great LTS. We made a ton of progress on things like DOTS 1.0, multiplayer, and other features. There's way more for us to do. But we invest across an extraordinary number of platforms to make sure that Unity remains performant, that it's easy to build games across those platforms, and we're focused on continually adding features and functionality to make games better. There's more for us to do, and I want to invest deeply in it. And but I don't believe we've stagnated. I believe every one of those has been better, and I believe the feedback we get where things aren't are always what pushes us to do better.
Okay, so the question was about stagnation, just in case you were really looking into this money question. I mean, I think one thing that's probably unfair with the stagnation question is that it depends on probably the complexity of the game you're making. If you make several simple games, maybe you don't notice that Unity has made some changes that just don't mean a lot to you. So I don't try to. I tend not to trust every person's word when they say these things. But at the same, because, ask somebody when was the last time Netflix's home screen changed. They'll be like, it hasn't changed in years. And you're like, actually, it's changed like every 2 months. It's it's radically different. Yeah. You just don't notice it because it's hard to put a value or something on there. So
right.
Is that, but it is, but I still hear it quite a bit, which is there's just, like Godot, there's recently a post where someone's like, I just made this blurred character in Godot in 20 minutes, and I've been trying to do this for years in Unity. Why is Unity popular? And so I don't know. It's interesting.
I mean, this would be where it would help. I think you were saying Lana should come on the stream, and this is where it would help to have someone whose bread and butter is working with Unity, right? I simply don't know. I hear the same things you hear, but because I don't work with Unity, I don't know. I think possibly what people are reacting to is, hey, we expected more out of this engine and we feel like it's kind of treading water. That doesn't mean necessarily that it's not still having work done on it. It just means things people maybe imagined, more seamless asset streaming, better high-end rendering features, better level of detail management. Who knows what it is, right? In their head, they thought, because Unity announces these things and they hire people to work on them. Dots was a big thing they did, all this stuff. I suspect what they're really responding to is probably these things don't seem to be really transforming game development for people using Unity the way that maybe they hoped they would. But I don't know. I would love to hear from some Unity developers their specific feedback here, because you and I don't really do this for our job.
Yeah, I've played with Unity, but it doesn't make me an expert at all.
Yeah, I mean, people who have to ship with it, right? They know this stuff, and I don't.
All right, here we go.
Okay, I on the multiplayer side, at least, I've seen some really good improvements. So I tend to.
There's more to do. There's more to do, but Unity is so used across such a large variety of use cases that there are lots of in any one of them, 2D, 3D, multiplayer. I'm proud of work that we've done, and I would say that there's a lot more for us still to do.
Yeah, no, Unity's still my favorite engine. It still does the most stuff that I need to do.
That's
so
good, Jason.
I'm happy with
better be your favorite engine.
And I haven't had a whole lot of complaints personally. I know a lot of people have specific complaints about different systems, and some very valid ones. But overall, it's been, I think, pretty good. Can you talk about this? Is okay. Here, this is a big one. Can you talk about the stock distribution and selling complaints? Because I expect you probably can't talk.
Ooh, I like this one. So this is the stock distribution and selling complaints. I actually think it's going to be a huge nothing burger, but let's find out.
Too much about it because I don't know.
He's not going to tell us. He's going to say listen 4 times, but I'm still. I hope we get something here.
Anything about stock laws and all that stuff, but I've seen all kinds of conspiracy theories posted about how people want Microsoft to buy the company and they're selling all their stock and all kinds of different things, and I have no idea how much of it is based in any kind of fact or rumor or just totally made up or what. So, and some of it's about I know there were some complaints about JR selling some stock, which I assume he does regularly though, and I don't really know. So can you talk about this and just explain that situation, or is it something?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to answer it. I mean, the simple truth is that all of the key senior executives have extraordinary rules, legal rules on when that they can trade stock because they have material non-public information or whatever the term is. And so for almost all of us, they're on this plan, 10B something plan, that you sort of have to commit the stock here, and then it sells on a certain number of times, and you have no control over it, because the only way that you can actually trade the stock is to make sure that it trades in a way that you have no control. So that stuff happens, and every time it happens, anything else that's happening, someone says, aha, they did this thing, when typically it's either that automated plan, or that it was being, some shares were granted, and then that was the taxes that were being sold or whatever. So that's the general. I don't know about it specific. So, but I will tell you that I do see that a lot. That particular one comes up every time any one of those gets reported, because they all have to be reported publicly, but they're all on automated plans.
So for those that don't know, I share some of these rules at Netflix. So I am not allowed to sell shares except for on specific intervals at specific times. And I have to make multi-month plans ahead of time to be able to sell something. So it's if I'm going to sell something, I'm like, come on, do good, don't fall apart. Because you have to bet on the economy still doing good. I accidentally got it sold at $6.80 on Netflix stock. The next month it was at $190 or something. So did I get lucky? I got real lucky on that one. And so it's actually probably a fair answer. I don't think they're doing some sort of insider selling right beforehand, because I don't see how it benefits them, especially if they want to get bought. If they want to get bought, the stock's going up.
I think realistically, though, what I would say is I think his answer is totally correct, meaning that there's no chance that this was some kind of weird dump and then announce kind of scheme. But what I would say is if you take a look at Unity's stock price over the past several years, what you could clearly see there is any executive would be crazy not to be selling their stock as fast as they can, because it's been nothing but a giant downward. I mean, if they could have sold all their stock back when it was at 160 or whatever it was at, they would have, right? So I think this misses a little bit of perspective, which is, did any of the executives think it was going to ride at 160? I doubt they did. So I mean, I think they are somewhat negative on the future of their company. They probably don't think it's worth 160, and that it's probably worth more down where it is right now, 30 or 40. So, I mean, his answer is correct, but also I don't think if you were like, ask these guys, oh, if you could hold these for another 10 years and sell them then, would you? I don't think they would be like, yeah, that it's definitely going to be worth way more in 10 years, right?
We're going to make tens of billions.
I don't think they probably think that right now. I mean, maybe they do. Maybe they're eternal optimists, but it's, so I think there's also a little tinge there. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, I don't think there was any weird timing happening here.
That's kind of what I assumed, that you don't get to make those decisions and that you probably wouldn't want to because it's just too risky anyway. And the amounts of stock that I mean, there may be some other ones that are different, but the thing that I'd seen was a relatively low amount of stock and money for JR that people were talking about. So I wasn't sure why that was a big deal, but maybe there's more to it. And I don't know. But yeah, I assume, like I said, it was all kind of automated too, especially after talking to a couple people who explained that. So, David Helgeson posted on, I said that wrong. I lost my words. David posted on Facebook that he thought you fucked up. Did you not consult your board before you decided to roll out this policy?
Okay.
I like the way that's posted.
Good question here.
Yeah, he's on my Facebook. He's one of my Facebook friends, so I definitely saw the post. But I think there's the most important part there is it's not actually correct. He said we fucked up. And David, number one, is on the board. Number two, bleeds Unity. Number three, is super connected to this particular the game developer community in and out. And he has, I think his pulse on what people are saying, and people are talking to him all the time. And he's saying we should have listened to more feedback. And he's right.
But he's on the board, so I assume the whole board has.
That's
been
my point.
On this
he
thing.
said we, not they. I think he would put himself. He's on the board. Board was in it. All of those sorts of things. But he doesn't like disappointing our creators any more than any of us do.
A little mea culpa there. We messed up. Ah, I'm on the board. Trust us. I'm going to say fuck because it's super radical. That's just how I take those things.
You're not wrong.
I'm on the board, but I'm still cool. I will swear in public.
I mean, everyone's in a hoodie on this call, right? Everyone's in a hoodie, Prime.
Well, you're not in a hoodie, Casey.
I mean the people on their call.
I know, but I know everyone is cool. Let's go. Hoodie Central. All right, we'll keep going.
Yeah, nobody does. It's totally understandable. Okay. I would assume the whole board has some insight and visibility and say on this kind of stuff. All right, now it's time for the big question, one that everybody keeps asking about in chat, and I think everybody is really, really curious to know. They want to know. Yeah, that's a good time for water too.
I want to be a part of the hoodie game.
Double water drink. I'm now really worried about the question. I had to drink and you drink.
Double it up. Yeah, this is a big one. So, how is Unity planning to regain the trust of its users after you change the terms of service on them overnight? Yeah. So this is the biggest concern I think everybody has.
Let's hear it.
It's a great question, and there's only one way to answer that, and that's it's actions with words. So the first thing I'll tell you is I'm committed to making sure that we continue to work as hard as we can to earn your trust. That said, actions show that, not words. Now, here's a couple of actions that we're taking today. Number one is what I said about the terms of service, to make sure that it's in there so that you can see action that's around that and see it inside of the actual terms. Number two is that's why we are doing things like putting the GitHub repo back up, because we want to make sure that there's also visibility. That's another way that we can make sure that there's visibility into our actions and that people see it. But I totally get, trust is easy to lose and it's hard to earn, and we have to show it, and then people will judge us based on that. And so our job is to make sure that we build the right tools, go about it the right way, and that people see that, and then it's up to them to make their own determination about trust. I can't tell you that you should trust me. You have to decide that on your own.
That's fair. I think in the on the terms of service thing, one of the questions that came up earlier that I think is related to this is if you're locking them with a specific version, so like 2019 is in the 2019 terms of service or whatever, is there anything that stops you from just changing that in the future? Or is there like a legal thing in that terms of service says we're not going to change this and we won't be changing this in the future? Or is there people are worried that you could say that now and then 3 years from now just change it again? I mean, 3 years from now, 2019 and 2020 will be pretty old, but still, yeah.
Well, I mean, we're not going to. I wrote that letter, and I wouldn't put it in the letter if I didn't think that the company was going to stand up for it, and so we're not going to. But that's why we're putting it in the terms. It's words in the terms, not just words in my letter. Someone told me that bold text is not legal. I said, okay, yes, we're putting it in terms, not just that we're putting something bold in an email. And that's why we're going to make sure, like, diff the repo. And we'll make sure that we keep putting it on the website, including what changed. We'll make sure there are clear systems there, but that's how we're showing it. I don't know what other actions I can take other than that, but that's what we're going to try to do as a company to make sure.
I'm gonna give a controversial take here, Casey. And you're gonna probably call me a nice guy again. I actually think his answer wasn't bad.
I think it was horrible.
Okay, let me give me my explanation. Now I'll give you yours. I do not believe there's a single thing that he could have said that would have made me earn trust back. He's 100% correct. In 2 years, we'll see if we have trust back. I'm on that team that he actually can't will it into existence. Casey, go.
I agree with that part of what you said, for sure. However, what he said in and of itself already tells me that he is untrustworthy. The reason for that is because they already did and said everything he just said. There is literally a post on Unity's official corporate blog where they say in fact, you know what, Prime? If you don't mind pausing long enough for me to read this to you, let me read it. This is from January 2019, their corporate blog. Retroactive TOS changes. When you obtain a version of Unity and don't upgrade your project, we think you should be able to stick to that version of the terms of service. In practice, that is only possible if you have access to bug fixes. For this reason, we now allow users to continue to use the terms of service for the same major year-based version number, including LTS builds that you are using in your project. Moving forward, we will host TOS changes on GitHub to give developers full transparency about what changes are happening and when. That's from 2019, Prime.
Okay.
That's from 2019. They deleted it and removed that specific clause. They already removed the clause he's saying they're adding to buy your trust. This is the most untrustworthy thing you could say about this. I mean, what am I missing?
No, you're right. Perhaps the ignorant. You know, I really want to believe the best in people, but I feel like I just got had.
I mean, this is why I said at the beginning, I'm like, where's the apology and the explanation for those things? What I want to hear is, all right, look, we had some bad actors in the company. I wasn't aware of some of these things. I should have been. It turns out that some of the lawyers or some of the people who were working on this stuff, they took a look at this and they thought that they could get away with this terms of service change. That was deeply, deeply bad, unethical behavior. We are firing those people. They are gone. It will not happen again. And we are specifically stating here publicly for everyone to see a verbal contractual agreement that we will no longer try to do anything like this, right? We will not silently delete this GitHub. We will not silently remove terms of service. If a term this important is removed, we will make a public announcement on the day it is removed, right? None of these things were said, which means they are not taking responsibility for this, and they are not actually apologizing. They're just going like, whew, we got to save this company. Tell them whatever. Tell them the same thing last time. See if they buy it again for 3 years. That's what I heard.
Okay, you're obviously a bit more in the know. Man, I got to quit letting this. I got to start being more of an asshole because you're so much better at me than
don't
this.
do it. Don't do it. The world doesn't need another me, Prime. I like the sweetness. It's nicer. It's better, right? You can have me on when you need a little vitriol, and then I go away and you're more pleasant. That's the better case for the world.
Okay. But I mean, it was an excellent point, which is they already stated they would do these things. They backpedaled, and they're now re-giving it as if it is some new thing, which is not new thing, but they didn't. Yeah, they made no recognition of the wrong they did. And so there's, in some sense, it's a lie by omission, which is you don't want to do that. That's grody. It's grody.
Yep.
All right, continue on, people.
Is it just going to take some time, probably? So in the meanwhile, the next question was, why should users keep choosing Unity in the future?
Ooh.
Seems like a very soft question. I'm sure they meant it as a very mean question and a hard question. But
I think people have a lot of choice. There's a lot of really good game engine technology out there. Our job is to make sure that ours is a great way that you can make great games across a lot of platforms. The thing that makes Unity the best, and I know this is where a lot of the sort of anger that we've justly received this week is from our community. part of why part of why I would say that you should pick Unity is because we have an extraordinary community, builds extraordinary resources. It makes it easy for people to work with each other and learn things from each other. And we're going to try to continue to make sure that we build tools that make that continue to be there, and be there with you. And then again, you definitely have choices, and it's our job to make sure that you feel like ours is the best choice.
I feel like every game.
So effectively, why should someone choose Unity? And he cites that it's good community, lots of good learning resources, lots of good sources. I mean, I guess for me, that rings true. The only time I ever used Unity, I looked up a bunch of stuff. It's pretty easy to use. It was a good experience. I haven't used Godot, so I can't really, I don't have a lot I can say about Godot, but, when I used Unity, it was a good experience.
And I mean, I think the number of people who use Unity, it speaks for itself. I mean, obviously people like this product and they want to use it. If they didn't, this would all be over already. Everyone would just be gone and there'd be right? The only people who would still remain are people who are too far in development for their games to pull out. So I think people do want to use Unity. No matter, it doesn't matter what I think of the engine, doesn't matter any of that stuff. It just matters, do people want this thing? And they do. So I think his answer is correct. That's why people use Unity. Unfortunately, that means they'll be using it under this really sort of shady arrangement that they don't know if their partner is really an ethical partner. And that's why, at least for people like me, I'm so kind of invested in this particular controversy, is because I am legitimately worried about that. I don't like to see people who just want to develop games getting screwed like this, and I'm really worried about that thing. So I think his answer is correct, but I wish it wasn't necessarily that way.
Okay, that's fair. That's a fair take right there. Let's keep on going. Actually, I hear Pirate Software. He's also here, and he is wondering if he wants to join, and I say absolutely.
Devices was the kind of pushing point, and it's one of the things that also I think keeps a lot of people in Unity, because Unity's got this wide access to
it's right past
deploying
the mobile,
out to whatever the hell you want to deploy to, and it, for the most part just works and is pretty straightforward. Got 15 minutes left. I want to see if I can get through a bunch more of these questions. This one, we've kind of talked about it a little bit already, but how is Unity going to legally ensure that they can't retroactively change the TOS again? Is there any, you kind of answered this earlier, but I don't know if there's any more you want to say about it.
Yeah, we're going to, to me, there's two things we can do. I'll just call it trust and verify, I guess. Trust, do, and verify. So we're saying it very clearly. We're going to put it in our terms, and then we're going to make it clear and easy to track by making sure it's in our GitHub so that you can check to see whether there's something that's changed in any of those terms of service.
You mean like it was originally?
That's the way we're addressing like how we do it. But
okay, hold on. So I got to put a pause here. Was it in their terms or was it on their website?
Terms.
Because those are two.
It was in the terms.
It was in the terms
on the website and in the GitHub.
Prime, it was removed in April of this year. It is literally, you can now, because they restored the GitHub, you can even now go and read the section on the GitHub that was removed. But if you'd like, I can read it for you now. It happens to be up on my screen, the term that was in there.
Okay, so this is part of the terms of service.
Part of their actual literal terms of service. It said, Unity may update these Unity software additional terms at any time for any reason and without notice, as you would expect. And those updated terms will apply to the most recent current year version of the Unity software, provided that if the updated terms adversely impact your rights, you may elect to continue to use any current year versions of the Unity software.
Yep.
They removed that.
They removed it.
They removed it.
Oh, so there's
this
actually
is why
a GitHub diff that actually shows the diffing of it going from it's red, it's gone.
Yep.
This is why I'm so amazed by this, because his comments saying like, oh, we're going to do all these things. We're going to do it. Look how good we're doing. Look how much better we're doing as a company. You removed this shit for this problem to happen. Like, you can't just shoot yourself in the foot and be like, look, I bought a new boot, guys. My old one was ruined. It's fine. Like, it doesn't make any sense, dude. Like, this kind of behavior is very strange to me, legitimately. You cannot just go and delete that and then be like, we're doing better by putting it back in. The exact same thing that you removed that caused this problem in the first place. That's crazy, dude.
And you'll also notice that when asked about this, because that question did come up on the stream, what he specifically said was he was unaware that GitHub existed. And that's all he said. He didn't say who had removed it, why it was removed, why the terms of service were changed, or if there were any consequences for the people who did that. So in other words, he's not aware of it. And by the way, he's the person who was selected to come out and talk about this instead of the person who was aware of it and did cause this, right? Who would have had to field the questions and would have had to explain why they did that. They intentionally have someone talking about this particular thing who can absolve themselves from responsibility, saying they weren't aware, and then he just moved on. No mention of anything else. So again, extremely untrustworthy. I was really kind of, yeah, it's the media training response. It was very bad.
What about you,
media
Lana?
training response? But the problem is it's provably false. That's the issue.
Yeah, I mean,
if you're going to make a
really
statement
hurt.
like that, yeah,
that hurts.
Yeah.
Lana, what about you on all this?
The TOS is the biggest thing, I think, because, well, there's two things. Okay, one is that we didn't get an explanation as around the TOS. So we have no reason to believe that it won't happen again because we don't know why it happened in the first place. And like you guys said, the thing that they're saying is how you can believe that we're not going to do it by the same thing that just happened, but we don't understand why it happened in the first place. So that's kind of unresolved, I think. The other thing that's unresolved is they keep saying, when people say, like, why did this happen in the first place? They keep saying, we didn't listen to the community. We should have listened to the community. But they are not putting in action ways to listen to the community so that this doesn't happen again in the future. So I think he needs to, they need to come up with something. If that's the reason that it happened in the first place, they need to make sure it doesn't by fixing the problem that's there, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, because Twitch apparently does this as well, which I'm not 100% purchased on this one, but they have Twitch ambassadors, which are supposed to be people that are representing. They get to go in on the meetings before any of the upcoming Twitch changes happen. And so every category has one or two ambassadors if it gets to a certain size, and that's just how it works. And so they're supposed to be informed about all decisions that are made by Twitch. And it's a publicly known list, so there's a list of people that have it. To me, that seems like a reasonable kind of situation, so that if you want to know what's going on, you know that there's representatives that have the semi-in story. Not the full in story, but the semi-in story. And at least that would be nice to have people you could point to, and you could ask them, did they tell you about this price change? And if they say no, you go, but you're on the ambassador list, Oh,
that's me.
That's you. You're on that list.
They have Unity insiders. I'm on the list, and I'm obviously NDA'd, so I can't say too much about it. But even just them saying we have a group of Unity insiders, and we're going to make sure that we get their feedback on decision making or something like that. Like I can't say, like I said, I can't say too much about what's inside those conversations. But if they publicly said we will address the insiders. There's a lot of insiders who have been really vocal about this, and those insiders have shared some of that stuff, like not like NDA stuff, but they're communicating and just saying like we will do that in the future. I think would have helped a bit.
Okay, so I don't know if you're allowed to answer this. Were you informed of this thing that happened before it happened?
I better not say.
Okay, fair. That's a fair statement. I don't want to put you in a weird spot, so we'll just move on from that. All right, let's keep on going. So I was just curious, Kat. All right, we're gonna start. I'm right around like 3:10.
Yeah, I think that's the answer.
Okay. Let me get through it. I'm reading through all of my questions. There's a lot of good stuff here. I want to take this one because it's one that's I think interesting and controversial. And you've talked a little bit about this before. They wanted to know if they can get a deep technical explanation of how the install-based tracking will work with the exceptions circling right now. When I was talking to Dave earlier on the stream, saying, hey, I would really love it if Unity had some magic piracy tracker thing that tells me all of my valid installs and tells me all of the pirated ones. You can just briefly answer that one?
Well, our focus is on self-reported, and our focus is on, first off, I'm not the deep technical expert to give a deep technical answer on anything. Just, I wouldn't try to pretend to be, because then I would really get picked apart. But the answer is it's self-reporting, and our focus is going to making sure that we're clear on data that works, that's easily accessible, that you have, like store reports and things like that. And if you don't want to do that, that you have a choice, and that you can just do the 2.5% revenue share. And then, by the way, we are going to enter into like, hey, let's have a conversation with our deep technical experts and your deep technical experts, and we'll continue to build, more ways to make sure that we're all clear there.
Okay. Yeah.
It was on the proprietary proprietary algorithm, and they're relying on self-reporting. How long do you think self-reporting is going to last? I know I keep saying a year. That's my guess.
Yeah, that's a complete non-answer from them. There's no way to enforce self-reporting. There's no way to actually detect piracy in that way effectively, unless you're pulling a lot of analytics from the end user, which you're going to run into violations of GDPR with that. Like they can't do what they're talking about, not effectively.
I have a feeling, this is just speculation, that what they're doing with this, because everyone's confused by this. Like you said, it's different. You can't really track the things that we're all worried about, right? I have a feeling that they're basically doing both. Everyone's like, why isn't it just a rep split? This is just, again, me trying to make sense of this. If you use their analytic tools, if you use their tools that are used to track whatever things, to monetize, to put ads in your game, then you get numbers. I'm assuming you would and will get numbers from that, which you can use to report the thing. And if it works out to be less than 2.5%, obviously you're going to continue to use those tools to. So I think it's more of like a encouragement for people to use their tools, is my guess, but who's to say?
Do you think that it would be making an immense amount of friction if you don't use their tools then?
It would be a 2.5 fee, which I'm assuming is going to be likely to be less in most cases, but who knows?
Okay. Yeah, it sounds like an incentive to use their ads at that point. That would make the most sense, like we were talking about before.
I'm also not sure that it really completely addresses some of people's questions, because a lot of the questions were around what actually is the number that we're supposed to be counting here? Like, how does that counting work? And so saying, well, it's going to be self-reported. Well, self-reported, again, which I think I said before, isn't a specification. That's just saying we're going to trust your numbers until we audit you, which is fine. I mean, that's a thing that you can do in a contract. But the question is, what numbers are you asking us to report? When you say we're supposed to report installs, well, what are we supposed to report? Every time the user installs it, every time the user purchased a thing they could have installed, like, what is it? So I still think they need
that. Is it per unique user?
Like they need to clarify.
They did clarify that. I believe it's.
So what's that?
I believe it's per distribution platform. I believe. I'm not 100%, but it's like once on Steam, if you get it on Android, not through, like, if you get it on your laptop and your computer through Steam, that's still one. But if you get it on if you get like the mobile app version of it, that's one. And if you get like the desktop version, that's one. So it's not per platform.
How about this too? How long does it take until that's no longer like valid? So like if you have a user that downloads your game, they play it, they don't like it, they leave it alone for an entire year and come back. Do you get charged twice? How long do we hold that data for? How long do we track the unique user information?
Monthly.
No, not just monthly. Like, what if that person goes and reinstalls your game every month?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question, actually. Yeah,
because
I assume
have
no,
to store
but
that data to be able to find out if it's unique or not.
And I don't know if Steam provides like the exact detail hooks.
They don't.
For you to be like, well, user, bob@gmail.com downloaded it in November, so I don't have to. I need to dedupe Bob manually from here on out.
Yeah, so I have games up on Steam, and I can't pull that information. I can't actually find out individual installs. I can find out individual purchases and how many refunds I get, and how many of those purchases are through the Steam environment or through the Steam key. And that's pretty much it, man. I can know where in the world they are, but I don't know how many times they installed that game.
Well, again, I'd just like to emphasize, too, that really can't be the complete answer, because if it was, that's just sales. If all they're asking for is how many of each of these platforms did users, click purchase, even if that purchase was $0, they're just talking about sales numbers. That's not an install count. An install count has to mean something different than how many times was this thing, quote unquote, bought in each of these stores, because why would you call that an install? It's not an install.
Yeah, right? So at that point, I, as a developer that launches on Steam, I would never be able to have the metrics that they require for this to work, even to self-report it.
Or they're just naming it weird, and they shouldn't have called it install. So that's why I say, like, it's not necessarily a huge deal here, but I'm saying that the confusion has not really been cleared, at least not to my mind. I wouldn't really know exactly what they meant yet.
I think the thing is,
they said specifically the language around the installs before was when the user is installed the game. So like, I don't know how else we can take that, right?
I think, but on the stream, he specifically said, oh, well, if the person, how many times how many people on Steam have bought the thing, basically. He kind of described it as if it was a sale. And I'm like, but that's not an install. So again, I just think if they're trying to dispel confusion, it's not working. I'm even more confused now than I was before.
Yeah, no, I think the biggest danger to that for me is specifically how long do we store that user data for, and what is the legality around storing that unique user thumbprint anyway. Like, it's going to be different in every region. GDPR is very restrictive about that kind of stuff. You can't just do that like on, doing it on your own with no reason. It's very anti-GDPR. It's not a good idea. So like, that is pretty dangerous to me. And then also the idea that it is self-reported means there's always going to be fudging of the numbers. There's always going to be an audit structure that they haven't described yet. That audit structure could lead to the collapse of your studio or a massive bill, a fine to you if you don't do it correctly. And it's not really well explained right now. This whole thing feels pretty ham-fisted, and like they didn't think it out before throwing it out to the public and making sure that it was like law now. And they haven't walked that portion of it back, the install structure, which makes no sense. I really still think that this should just be a revenue share model. It should just be a rev share model, throw out all this weird bullshit that they've been doing, and it just walk that part back, because it's not enforceable. It doesn't make sense in a business setting, and we can't get the metrics for that anyway. And it may not even be legal to get those metrics.
So I think one thing you're missing is that I think what happened here is that Unity saw the massive success that is the tax code in America and figured that maybe they could do the same thing, right? We self-report until they say, no, you did it wrong, and then they come and audit us. They could get a whole IRS division going on. It could be pretty good. Because real talk, like unironically, you have to hire people to audit. You actually have to hire Unity IRS to be able to know if that happened, which just feels... I
can't wait for the Unity cops to show up at my door, dude. They're going to break my kneecaps. Terrifying.
We're Unity cops.
Yeah, they're after me, dude.
We should probably move on, because it's minutia anyway, and there's many ways. Like, people in the chat are mentioning things, and I agree with the people in the chat that the things they're saying are potentially what this could mean. But what I'm trying to point out is, until we have like really good, very explicit explanations of exactly what it means, it's not good enough. Because sure, all of those are possible, right? It could be that they're just, using the term install because they don't want to use sales because they want to capture the fact that something might be $0. But like, again, until we see the actual list of here is exactly how an auditor who comes to your company and audits your books will determine what you owe, it's just kind of conjecture as to what it will really mean in practice. So, and I haven't seen that. If you can link to that, that'd be great. But I haven't seen that.
Yeah, because currently, from what I've seen, it's a lot of we'll have that. No, I don't want a future we'll have that.
Yeah.
You need to have it now. That should be set up before you roll something like this out.
But anyway, beating a dead horse. So
all right, we're at 11:34.
I feel like the self-reporting is like the key thing here that people didn't know about, and I mean I didn't know about either, and really made it kind of a big mess. So I want to go on to another question that just popped up about they're wondering if you still believe the runtime fee policy works given all this backlash. Do you think it's still a good idea? I get the sense that you do, but
I think this is a really important, critical program for Unity. I think what we announced last week, and we have some changes for today, it's critical foundation for the company. I think the choice is a good thing. I personally believe that when people do it, you should try the calculator, try it in with your numbers, see whether it works for you or not. They might find that they're going to just pay less if they do like based on initial engagements versus the revenue share, and that's awesome. That's actually why we wanted to build it that way. We think that it actually tracks well to a shared success model. And gives a way for people to not have to pay as much. So yeah, I really do believe it's going to be a strong program.
Yeah, I feel like for the majority of developers, it's probably going to be pretty good. Like it's a lot better than a big revenue cut, or than a lot of big revenue cuts, especially if you're doing like a $20 or $50 or $60 game. And when you guys were thinking this through, like what was that kind of the rationale? The rationale was just like, if you're building a $20 game, this is a nothing fee to you. And if you're building a massive game where you're not charging very much, but you're making millions and millions, you're still paying something. And I guess I'm also curious, why was the like rev cap not initially considered in there? Was it just thought that it wasn't even needed, that it was never going to go that high? Or was it just planned like, hey, we want to, I mean, obviously I know that the idea is that like, hey, we want to take 200% where not realistic. And I assumed that you always probably wanted to be under Unreal's percentage was my kind of guess. But why was that not kind of in there from the beginning? Is there a reason that it was kind of left out?
Well, listen, this is a transformative business model change, something that we're really, really focused on. And when we were working on our models, we expected that the vast majority of people would pay, 2 to 3% and often less. And so one of the things we heard when we put it out there is that, yes, even if that was the case, it was hard to plan for it because there were these outlier situations that maybe you couldn't control. And for some cases where we were like, well, if there's a case that doesn't work, and we should have just communicated this better and we should have planned for this better. It's not our intent to charge someone, like a crazy percentage or anything. We're not going to do that. But, we needed to fix it so that people can plan and have this 2.5% revenue share, or do this particular one so that they have choice. But the real fundamental idea, we always thought that this was going to be somewhere around 2 to 3%. So we're frankly just building on this transformative business model.
I'm fine skipping this question. It's just about the money. I think we kind of talked that one to death, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm really surprised that he believed that type of install model would end up being 2 to 3%. That's very strange. Because we've shown so many different examples of how that is not the case. Even other developers have shown them how that is not the case. That's really weird. It makes me wonder where inside of Unity did they determine that value?
It's probably an average. Honestly, it's just probably an average. That's the problem about averages, is it hides a lot of outliers. They don't make sense. Or it's
it hides a lot of outliers. And in this case, when you are building something that is used by such a wide number of people, those outliers, you've ruined their business. You've ruined their studio. You've ruined potentially their lives. They've poured years or like maybe even a decade into a game, and now they can't make any money off of it because you've changed your business model like this. That's a big deal. That's really shitty.
Yep.
It is a big deal, but they do say that they're going to cap it at the 2.5. So they do say you will never pay more, which is why I really do think it's just going to be like, if you want to, this is again, I'm just guessing here. If you want to see what you have to pay 2.5. If you want to know what your alternative payment amount would be, install our tracking tools, and then it will just show up, and it probably won't be perfectly accurate. Like you said, there's a lot of potential for problems with that, and whether it's the type of game you're selling or the fraudulent activity. But assuming that that's less, then people will be like, okay, great, I'll keep using these tools. So that's all I can I can guess there if they're capping it.
Yeah, I think in freemium models, it's always going to cost more. Always. Yeah. Like if a freemium game is going to do that, because they have so many installs to total revenue that you're never going to want to do that at all. I think the other thing that's really weird is he posed it as an option. It's like, oh, this could be an option for you. But one of those options, like for doing the cost per install, you have to download their entire tool set and go through that entire process for that, just to see, like you said, to see what the cost would be. That's a lot of extra stuff to do. That's a whole lot of extra stuff. And then on top of it, again, I don't know how it collects those metrics or for how long, right? And at that point, do you get to choose? Like there's so many different things. It's like, oh, you know what? You're a business that wants money. This number is larger than that number. So I'm just going to go with this number from now on, and I'm not going to use your tools. Like, how long does that last? I'm interested in seeing that.
I have some questions.
Oh, sorry. I also wanted to bring up the trust point again. I hate to be the person who constantly just says the trust is the issue, but to me, this answer, again, sort of sidesteps the actual problem here, which is that when these install fees were initially rolled out, it was very clear why it wasn't a revenue share. It was because the revenue has already happened. The install fees were clearly designed to be able to recapture money from games that had already been shipped and paid for, but were now going to be installed again in 2024.
Yep.
That's the only reason I can think of why they did it that way, because they wanted to capture money from revenue that was already out the door that they can't go claw back in any real way. And so again, I didn't hear an answer to that question. Why is the revenue cap or the revenue model only arriving now after the backlash? And I think if it hadn't have been for trying to claw back that previous revenue and take it for Unity, we would have seen that alternative in the initial package. So again, in terms of my trust radar, just huge red warning lights about that. It's like, this is extremely untrustworthy, and I didn't hear anything to explain away that seemingly very obvious explanation for why it wasn't in there to begin with.
Yeah, it also smells a lot of like the general corporate stance of punch really hard, and then when people are upset, then punch a little bit softer. But now you get most of the things that you wanted in there, and people accept it because it seems a little bit better than it was originally. And I honestly think that most of this monetization model they put together is kind of shit. Like, I don't think there's anything in there that I would be happy with whatsoever. A rev share only model is the only thing that I could see going forward making any sense at all.
Fair. All right, let's move on. We're at 8. 20.
Yeah, it felt to me like one of those things that was probably thought internally and just never put down on paper. Everybody just kind of assumed that it would be that. And like I saw all the posts and the calculations and stuff and saw the numbers, and my default reaction was like, I went to like watching Mythbusters and like that just doesn't seem plausible. Like if they did that, everybody would leave and you wouldn't have any games. Like, it wouldn't make any sense at all. So
by the way, we didn't help either, right?
Because it was very unclear.
If we had the calculator, because as soon as we didn't have the calculator, everybody else had to implement it themselves. Maybe they didn't, and we didn't communicate the details well enough. So then the answers themselves, the way they calculated it didn't match what we were trying to do. We didn't provide any other information. That's on us. We didn't do a good enough job building out the information to make it clear. But even beyond that, the plan that I think we have now is a better plan because it gives people predictability and it gives them choice.
Yeah, I think that and it gives them a lower rate on, well, at least it gives the guys that I know a lower rate, right? Because they're working on these high-end PC games and stuff. It makes it much lower. Now, there was another question about, which I think is pretty important one, about going forward, how you plan to kind of work with the community on big decisions, maybe not just on like big pricing ones, but other big decisions in the future. Like, are you going to start reaching out for, because honestly, I feel like from the beginning, it would have been great if there was some public polling, just reaching out to all Unity developers, maybe even a little thing that pops up in the Unity hub that says, hey, go fill out this form. How do you feel about this thing? Give us your feedback. I thought something like that would be good. Do you guys have plans to do anything like going forward with the community to figure out these new decisions, especially when they're big ones that are going to piss off a lot of people?
Well, listen, I've been really focused over the last week on getting this particular plans updated and make sure we can get back out. I think, by the way, the idea that you just gave is a really great idea. I think polling, putting it in the editor and sort of finding other ways to connect is awesome. But yes, we will do it. I don't have any other kind of key things to talk about there, except for one, which I also I'm really excited about. Like this is our first real in-person Unite back this year. I think one of the best way that these things happen are at GDC and DICE and Gamescom, and certainly at Unite, where we're together having time to talk specifically about where Unity is and where Unity is going. We'll be back at Unite in Amsterdam, first time since I think 2019 that we did a kind of a hybrid one last year, but the first real one of being back in person. And I think we miss having that, like just beyond the like, hey, let me pitch that Unite is coming up. The actual thing itself of not having as much of that, where devs themselves are all together and all with Unity together, and we're talking about where we're going. I'm glad we're getting back to that because I think it's really important.
Yeah, I'm excited for Unite too, especially now that I think things are mostly better, and that most of the issues that at least
it's about Unite and stuff. Does anyone have any comments on this?
No.
Nope. Lana, have you been to Unite?
Yeah, they brought me to the last one.
Was it fun? What is it like?
It was a blast. Yeah, I was really looking forward to one in Amsterdam. I'm not sure what's going on with that now.
Okay, yeah.
I wonder how the tone will change at that event from this.
There's a few insiders who have publicly said that they won't be going. So I think the tone will be pretty different. I don't know if they're going to be. I mean, I assume they're going to be getting feedback from everyone who goes based on his answer. And I really like Jason's suggestion. Like that would be cool to just see like regular polling, regular feedback, and like asking the community, the whole community, not just the insiders, like what they want to see on the products regularly. I think that'd be cool.
Yeah. Yeah, let people feel like they have a little bit more input on the direction, what's important to them during development.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I wonder if it was Unite anything like TwitchCon. Have you been to TwitchCon? I bet you, on average, people smell better. I can tell you that much.
This was in Montreal. They had like a bunch of talks. They announced new stuff, networking events. It was cool. It was really cool. I would imagine similar to TwitchCon.
Okay. By the way, the joke that people at TwitchCon stink, it's not entirely untrue. There's been a few unsavory smells there. All right.
I also you take a bunch of those streamers and put us in one place. Like I live in my basement. I don't leave this room. You kidding me? Put me outside, not in the sun even. Oh.
Also, I don't know what is the notion that a lot of game developers are going to be better as a overall aroma. I mean, have you not heard the legendary stories of Tig Jam?
Dude, okay. I get the best of both worlds. I'm both of those things. It's going to be awful. You don't want me in the room.
Okay, maybe you're all right. Maybe we should have some sort of competition here. Send the best of each.
You saying a stink off?
Yeah. Stink off.
The Primogen yearly stink off, dude.
All right, we'll keep going. We'll just finish this out, and then issues
that I had and a lot of the people that I talked to personally had are pretty much addressed. I I mean, there's still people talk about trust in the company and stuff, but I think we had a discussion about this earlier that like trusting companies is a strange thing anyway. Like you want to trust that a company is not going to do bad stuff, but yeah, it's not what I don't base any of my personal feelings or emotions on trust on a company, because I feel like every company is a company. Like they change, they morph, they merge, and they sell, and all kinds of random stuff happens, and it's a tough one. But hopefully you're able to kind of rebuild some of that. I think it will probably happen with a lot of these changes, especially the retroactive removal thing. I think that's gonna that kind of alleviates most people, at least like I said, most people I know is concerned. So obviously not everybody in chat, and obviously not all the Unity developers. By the way, yes, we are live for the couple of people who seem to be confused about it. Well, I know we have a hard stop in like 4 minutes because you've got, I'm sure, a ton of other stuff to do today. But I want to just give you a chance to say any like last words and stuff for people. Remarks. I think I've gone through all the questions that I had on. If you got any final words or parting things that you want to tell people before we go.
Yeah, I really appreciate the feedback. Listen, it's really tough feedback this week, deserved feedback. I really appreciate it. It makes us better. And frankly, Unity is what it is because of this extraordinary community of game creators building extraordinary games. And if there's anything that the last week shows, if you pull Unity out of it, is that the extraordinary passion that everybody here has for what they do, their livelihood, their games. It is inspiring. It's inspiring. So I know we have work to do. I know that, this announcement, while I feel very, very strong about the set of changes that we announced, I feel very passionate about this transformative business model. We have work to do to continue to earn your trust every day to make sure that we build the best version of Unity we can. So thank you for the feedback.
Cool. Yeah, and hopefully everybody keeps just sending their feedback, post on Twitter, let everybody know what you think about the new changes, and hopefully everybody is mostly happy with stuff. I mean, like I said, I am, but I'm a happy dude and it pisses people off. So I totally understand. I don't mean to be too happy and make too many people angry, but it's hard for me not to. Anyway, thanks again, Mark. I appreciate it. This was helpful. And thank you especially for listening to everybody's feedback and not just doubling down and saying, hey, we're sticking with this, screw you all, whatever. Like, I like that you guys actually made the changes that I think address most of the people's problems. So thanks again for that. And thanks for coming on and answering these questions. I really appreciate it.
All right, thanks. I really appreciate the time, Jason. Thank you, everybody, for being here.
Oh, all right, thank you, Mark.
All right, I'm going to cut it here. Okay, so I do have one. I have to ask Lana, because Lana actively has a game about the drop. Like, how overall, I know you're an insider, and I don't know what the rules are and all those kind of things, but overall, with all these changes, going forward, is Unity still the choice? Do you still think it's the best choice for, someone getting started in the game world? Does it make you wish that you did things in Godot or Unreal Engine or whatever? Or are those things kind of like, because I know people always say that, people are very hyperbolic on the internet. Is there truth to that, or is Unity still a pretty solid option?
That's a loaded question. I mean, I'm stuck with Unity until the game's done. Like that's not really in question, right? Like that's part of the problem is you're so dependent on your game engine because you're so invested and you put so much into learning it and making your game in it. Like you can't just change near the end of a project if you want to. You can't do that. So that's why this was an important issue. And is it the right choice moving forward? I don't know. I was saying earlier today, like the couple of the reasons I chose Unity, one was no matter how much money you make, they take a flat rate per month. Like it was honestly too good to be true. Like that to me was a huge selling point. Like you can make as much money as you like and you just pay the monthly fee.
Yeah.
There's like tiers, but it's still, if you pay 5% versus like a couple thousand a year, it's so much less if you're successful. So like if you're building a company and you want to pick the engine that's going to be like the best monetization option, that was easily Unity, like glaringly obvious. Mm-hmm. So that's definitely, it was a pro for Unity. That's no longer there. They do have still, 2.5 is competitive compared to the 5% of Unreal and stuff. But the other thing that was a big part of Unity was the community. Like there's so many accessible tutorials and so many places to ask for help and so many people asking questions and those questions already answered. It was so rare that I'd go online if I was stuck on something and someone had not already encountered it and someone else had not already answered it. Like that was so cool. That was a really cool part of Unity. And to see so many people leaving because of the problems that were caused from this, so disheartening, like so disheartening. So right now, I don't know, I'm just kind of, I'm just kind of seeing how things go. Like I'm using it regardless for at least a few more months, probably longer with wrapping up Strain.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to kind of take it from there. So it's hard to say right now, but it's definitely a hit to the engine, unfortunately, even with these changes that they put in place.
Can I add something to that question as well? We had a question earlier before, I think it was actually only me and Prime were on, and maybe you can speak to this. Because we don't really use Unity for game development, we were wondering, a lot of people have said that in the past few years, Unity has not really been making much in terms of advancements to the engine, or that people haven't been feeling like the engine has been improving, or that it's in fact maybe regressing, like there's been more bugs or anything like this. People have been saying those sorts of things. What's your take on that? Like, has it been noticeably different, or is it basically the same? Have you been pleased with the improvements they've been making? Disappointed? Like, do you have any insight into that?
That's a good question. I have heard people mention that as well. I wouldn't say I've noticed it regressing. I think that's pretty severe if it was getting worse. They're pretty good at least maintaining it. When bugs come up, they tend to fix them. I think people are comparing it to Unreal a lot, and they're seeing things like Nanite and Lumen, and they're like, when do we get that? We want that. We want this. And I think that if you compare it to the engine, then there's some things, like depending how it goes, you might be disappointed by it in that sense. But I don't know. I've been really enjoying using Unity up until recently. It's been stressful. The tools I use have been great, and there's new tools coming in regularly. And honestly, another part of the community being awesome is there's all kinds of like cool assets being made all the time, some of those creators are no longer going to be with Unity. So again, disappointing on that side. But I've enjoyed using it. I can't comment on that note.
Yeah, a lot of people are actually talking about like what engine should I use. I saw a couple people talking about it in chat. If you're trying to choose an engine to make a game project, there's really only 3 criteria you have to look at in general. And the first one is, does this engine provide the features that I need to build the kind of game that I want to build? Can I build the kind of game I want in this engine? That's number 1. Number 2 is the business model. Does this business model actually match with the amount of income that my studio has and the funding that we currently have? And the third one is, does the workflow work for me and my team? Those are the 3 biggest things that you have to ask whenever you're trying to build anything inside of an engine. And the problem is with this current change to Unity, it has thrown that monetization question completely out the window for a lot of people, and they're already signed on to that contract. So it ends up being really, really devastating for them. So if you look at the other 2 options, though, like the feature set is still there, the feature set's still fine, the workflow is still good and still fine, but you also have alternatives now. And if you go and look at Godot is basically the same in terms of workflow for quite a lot of stuff, and it's free and open source. So you never have to worry about that monetization side. That's one of the questions gone. Like I work on my games in Game Maker Studio because we have 2D games. I got that license on $100 lifetime license, no royalty. I don't have that problem. I don't have to have that problem because there's alternatives to this, right? And I'm not going to make a 3D game in that because Game Maker's not good for 3D. But for 2D, it does everything that I need it to do. You could use Godot for that. You could use Unreal if you need a feature set for it. It's kind of overkill for the kind of game that I'm making. But for 2D games, you can still do it in Unreal. You can look at Octopath Traveler. That was made in Unreal. A lot of people don't realize that. Amazing 2.5D game. So these are the types of things you have to think about with an engine, and with them changing their business model this way, it's going to be a really rough time for a lot of people, man. And I don't like the new business model. I don't like the messaging they put out for this. I don't like the 1-2 corporate punch of they go, oh, it's really bad, and we're going to walk it back a little bit, but you're still paying more money on this stuff. I don't like the pay-per install model. And these are the types of things that I know are already turning off the next generation of game developers, and current industry titans are being turned off from it as well, because you don't want instability in your engine, especially not in the business model. That's terrifying, dude.
So I guess my big question is 2.5% enough for people not to just go for the full 5 and get Unreal? Like, is Unreal Engine that much better? These features that you speak of are that much better? And I mean, it's still up to $1 million. So, I assume most games don't make $1 million is my assumption. Probably fair, or I'd probably be making games right now. And so, how many people will get hit by that? And will the quote unquote better feature set, now that it's become more parity of payment, are more people going to just end up bleeding over to something like Unreal?
you'll come over to two different kinds of things. If you need the feature set of Unreal, I feel like people will end up using Unreal. If you don't need the feature set of Unreal, you will probably use Unity in this case because the 2.5% is just better. That being said, Unity and Godot, eventually Godot is going to overtake that, at least in the trajectory it has right now, and then you'd pay nothing. Yeah. So Unity doesn't really have a good deal there, right? If you have something that matches it, which is free, and you have something that is dramatically better than it that costs double what it costs, you have this weird middle ground that's not really good at anything and still has a business model that doesn't make sense. I'm worried that would last. I don't think it would, frankly.
Okay.
Yeah. Just to add to that, I agree that if you need things that Unreal has, you're going to use Unreal even despite the royalties. But I think that like each engine has things that you're going to be prioritizing over the revenue model, I guess, in some cases. But you make a good point that Godot is completely free. So if that's what you're looking at, then. But at
it's
the
not
same
even
time,
just
like,
Godot. Like there's other stuff too. You've got RenPy, you've got Construct, you've got all these different things that people use all over the place. And like, it's not just like a 3-engine market. It's huge.
But I think there's another aspect to the Unreal thing, Prime, that might be worth mentioning here, which is that, to the best of my knowledge, Unreal has never attempted to shake a developer down post-ship for more money. And that's what Unity did here. They were basically trying to get more money from people who'd already finished their games or have their games in development. To the best of my knowledge, when you sign a license agreement to use Unreal, you sign it for a particular product, right? For a particular development cycle. And so you know what the terms are that you're getting from the Unreal Engine up front. So if you ask a studio, would they rather pay 2.5% or 5%? Well, I can imagine them saying 2.5%. If you ask a studio whether they'd rather pay 5% or any percent that Unity decides to grandfather in on January 1st of a given year, well, that's a very different question.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that question will only be relevant for the next year or two. I do think that will go away. Like, long as they don't ever sound like they might do it again, I think this will be their one goof up.
Maybe.
I think for some people, they would agree with you, but I think for some people, they won't, man. Like, this blindsided everyone. It seemed planned and intentional with the removal of the GitHub. There's going to be a lot of people that are like, I'm out. Like, I'm not doing that ever again. You've broken the trust to a degree that I can't do it again. I'm going to be honest with you. Like, I run a website, develop.games, where I list out ways that people can make video games, because a big part of my community is teaching people to make indie games, like get in there and build stuff, right? Even if you don't think you can. I removed Unity from my website. I won't be putting it back on. Like, that kind of breach of trust is just too immense, man. There's no reason for me to ever tell people, yeah, you should totally use this after something like that. That's crazy. Like, no.
But I would also point out, even if you want to trust them, give them the benefit of the doubt, well, I would ask the question, why did they do it this time? The answer is because their financials don't add up. So my question is, how is 2.5% actually going to fix those financials? If you look at how much money they need just to break even, it's in the hundreds of millions of dollars that they have shortfall sometimes, right? Now, that's to break even, Prime. To become a profitable company that would justify a valuation like the one they have. Is 2.5% from a select few developers going to make up the hundreds of millions of dollars that they need to make for that?
Yeah, that's hard, because I mean, hey, I work at Netflix. We've raised prices, right? And so I know people get very upset about that. There's levers that people pull to make more money, and so what I see is that there's two levers that they have to pull, which is time to paying the royalty and how much that royalty cost. Like, that's going to be the two big levers they have. For Netflix, it's only one. It's one lever, or it's technically two levers: more content to make it appealing to get more people to sign on, or B, make people pay more, right? And so we used our last lever as a one-time pull, which is you can't share accounts. That was a one-time pull lever. Once we did it, we can no longer do that ever again. And so therefore, it's that's our only lever left, is more people or more payments. And so Unity is going to be under the same thing. If they're going under by hundreds of millions a quarter or a year, I mean, they got to figure that out a little bit. That's a lot of revenue that they have to make up for. And so my guess is, Unity itself will probably go through a big downsizing. They'll probably shift down a lot of the employees because that's one of the, internal levers, if you will. Do you really need 7,000 employees? I don't know what Unity does. I can't say they do or they don't, but that just seems like a high number. I mean, Netflix has 10,000 employees, and that involves a lot of studio and a lot of other activities that don't even involve making the actual product. I think it's less than 2,000 on just the product.
Yeah, I mean, how many people are going to have to hire for that risk team to start managing all of these different connections and checking, the auditing for that? Like, that's all risk team activity, and that they're going to have to hire more people to do that too.
Yeah, it seems like a hard road because even themselves charging this requires them to actually pay more to try to charge that. It's almost a double risk even for themselves because they just actually incur a higher fixed cost by now having more and more employees to verify these things.
They're sandwiched. I mean, they are sandwiched in terms of what they can do. If this royalty rate creeps up, it bumps up against Unreal, which most people acknowledge is a much more powerful engine. And, it needs more learning resources. I think most people also acknowledge that Unity is much easier to pick up. So it's not exactly the same, but that's looking ugly. And Unreal doesn't charge per seat licensing. So you're looking at something where you're creeping up towards someone who seems to be offering a better deal than you. And then in terms of like the rest of the stuff, like the free and how easy it's to get into and all that stuff, you've got Godot coming up from behind, right? They're basically sandwiching in. So I don't know. I've been warning about this for a while, right? Like I said, I was saying this is a dangerous situation and something like this would happen over a year ago. So I'm still saying the same things. This is not a good situation. And I don't think this is going to hold. Even this 2.5% thing. I'm not. I wouldn't trust them.
Well, I mean, their danger would be that Unreal could literally just take them out completely, right? Unreal could just be like, okay, we're 3% now. Now all of a sudden it's just like, how compelling is a 0.5%? You've just, I don't know, because obviously Unreal, all they have to do is they just have Fortnite money. License. They literally have the infinite 15-year-old money machine just flying at all times, just pouring in billions. So I don't know if they have.
Did you see how much money they made off of Fortnite last year?
Oh, I'm sure it's
$6 billion.
How much?
Yeah.
$6 billion.
That's so much money.
Unreal isn't trying to compete with Unity is the thing, right? It's like they're a Fortnite company, not an engine company.
It's crazy.
So I'm just pointing out this fact, right? It's like they if their sites were on Unity and saying we're going to take away this market, then I would even be more pessimistic on Unity's future. The only reason that they're not having that fight right now is because I don't fundamentally believe Epic cares about taking Unity's customers. No. It's not their priority right now.
Interesting. What about you, Lana? What's your thoughts on this?
I think that there are people who invested a lot of time and have companies, employees, education, material that took a lot of time and money to create and put together. And switching over a percentage of revenue is going to be, in a lot of cases, not worth hiring an entirely new team, starting from scratch with what you know. And I think that, I don't know. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I think that there are people who it just won't be worth it to leave Unity, even if they get a revenue, get undercut by revenue from Unreal.
Is Epic a private company?
They are.
Okay, yeah, that's why I can't find anything. I was just curious more about it. That's cool. That's also makes it so that they don't have to drive for any of these unrealistic expectations of growing revenue and all that. They can just continue to do what they're doing and be happy with what they're doing.
To be honest with you, I like when a business just wants to do well, not one that needs to grow infinitely, because that's not sustainable. You're going to have these types of problems anytime they're trying to build the business for the shareholders rather than building it for the customers. And sadly, that's the way that I see Unity right now, is they're trying to do this unsustainable business model that doesn't make any sense because they need to appease shareholders rather than appeasing the people that are actually using their product.
Yeah. It's a fair take. All right, well, hey, everybody, thank you for joining me. I can't believe I got all three of you on a tweet. Can we just have a little
I was in the middle of feeding my ferrets, too. I was like, oh, man.
I don't know how extensive it is to feed ferrets, but...
So if you don't know, I run a ferret rescue in Washington. So I take in injured and sickly ferrets from around the state, and I rescue them and then give them the best possible life they can have. So I have 17 ferrets. It's not a small amount.
Wow.
And it takes quite a while, and all of them have their own special needs and stuff. And I stream them here on Twitch as well. They're on ferrets.live. That's a thing. There's a plug. Enjoy that.
Wait, hold on. You actually have a permanently live ferret channel?
Oh, yeah. It's ferrets.live. It'll redirect you to the website. It's actually it's ferret software on Twitch. They're like, some of them are special needs. I actually have 2 of them have Wardenbergs and are deaf. I have a number of elderly ferrets as well that are in there. All of them came from really bad situations or had injuries or illnesses and things like that. Parents couldn't take care of them, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, here, let me link it in chat.
I literally had no idea that was a thing. All right, well, while we're here, we got to at least do 1 or 2 more plugs here. Yeah. Please plug away. Casey, Twitter.
I'll keep going if you don't.
I'm not good with plugs. I'm a game developer. I use Unity, so this is definitely been on my mind this week. I stream on Twitch. I'm at Lana_Lux, twitch.tv/Lana_Lux.
Right there, it's going away.
I'm on every day making my game.
Yep, I remember this starting. It's fun. And then Casey quit streaming on Twitch. He's a loser.
Sorry,
Really?
guys. I didn't quit. I just am too busy right now to do it. I'll be back. But this is not really a pluggable thing for me. I have been worried about this for a while, and it happened, and now I'm worried that people won't take away some of the important things from this. Like, so I kind of want to, like, I just want to make sure that Unity is actually pressed on these things, because I don't want to be here in the same situation 2 years from now talking about this again. So not really a pluggable thing. The plug is, please really scrutinize what they're saying here, because I really don't feel like this was a trustworthy response. And I think that there are a lot of possibilities. You can go to Unreal, you can go to Godot, you can think about what that means for the future of your studio. Please think carefully about it, because this is not a good thing to happen. It's been coming down the pipe for a while, and I don't think this is the end.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same reason that I'm not going to be, entertaining, telling new developers like, you should use this engine. I'm going to actively encourage them not to, until this whole thing gets resolved, until they can prove with a track record that this won't happen again. And that's going to take a while. That's not like it's a weekend. Yeah, we said sorry, it'll be fine. Like, no, this is going to take months, if not a year, for them to prove that their business model is now not unstable, that they have enough money, enough revenue for them to work properly, and that they don't need to change it again and do even more damage. They have to prove that. And that I cannot recommend the engine until that happens. There's no way.
That's fair. I think that's pretty fair. Because you definitely want an engine that is going to be around for tomorrow and the next day. And the next day.
The thing is like, I tell like hundreds, if not thousands of people, like, hey, you can get into game dev. You can start making things, right? Because I stream every day on here, right? And there's always some new guy, some new kid that's like, hey, can I make a game? I'm 16 and I'm just trying to do this. Or there's some dude who comes in who's like, I'm 50. Am I too old to make games? I'm like, no, you're not. Like, you could totally make this stuff. Like, do this, right?
Yeah.
And if I turn them towards Unity, and then they're a year or 2 years into development of their cool thing after they've made a couple of small games, and then they get screwed by it, I'm gonna feel bad about that, dude. And I won't put them in that kind of a position. I won't do it.
Fair. All right. Well, hey, I appreciate all of you. Thanks for joining us. I'll give you guys all shouts out in the description. It was fun times. It was fun to watch.
Yeah, thanks, Prime. That was fun.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for having us on, Prime.
No, I think it's great. And thank you, everybody, for pushing on Unity. I think it's great. I think that these little things help. I know that I'm just one small voice in many voices, but I think that being able to push people and seeing something come out positive, at least more positive than it was, I'm happy about that. And I like for it to be good for everybody, because I really hate seeing people just watch their livelihood potentially disappear, because that is totally, that sucks. That's not cool. So thanks, everybody.
Take it easy.
Bye.
Bye.
See you around.